Good afternoon, everyone. The time is now 1:30, and I'd like to call the July 16th meeting of the UWP Committee to order. Let's start with a few reminders. If you're in the room and you haven't already, please be sure to complete the sign-in sheet in the hallway. Members of the audience that want to make public comments later on the agenda should fill out a public comment card and hand that card to CMAP staff in the room. This meeting is being broadcast on Zoom and is being recorded. For those online to hear what is being said in the room, please make sure that we all use our microphones. For those new, just press the button on there and it'll turn green. It also remains best practice to identify ourselves when making a motion or a second. That way they know who's saying it online. For those participating via Zoom, please keep your microphones muted unless you're called upon to speak. When appropriate in the agenda, I will request comments from those online and will recognize you when it is your turn to speak. With that, let's start today by welcoming our newest representative from the Council of Mayors, Mayor of Rolling Meadows, Lara Sonoyka. Mayor Sonoyka, would you like to say anything?
Just briefly, so that we can keep this brief agenda, rather keep the agenda brief. My name is Lara Sonoyka. I am representing the Council of Mayors, and Rolling Meadows is in the Northwest region, but bringing back important information to the full Council of Mayors for the entire CMAP region. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome to the committee. Let's move on to self-introductions for the rest of the members here at the table. My name is Brandon Gaber. I'm the Metropolitan Planning Section Chief for the Illinois Department of Transportation and Chair of the committee. To my right,
Amy Lee, CMAP.
Scott Hennings, representing the counties.
John Paul Diepla, FHWA.
Chris Skogsbakken with PACE.
Heather Mullins, Regional Transportation Authority.
Christina Bader, CTA.
Dustin Clark, representing Metro.
thank you all. I'm going to assume we're good on quorum. Perfect. All right, we have the necessary quorum of voting members present. We've also received a request from Buck Doyle, representing CDOT, to participate remotely in the meeting. The request was made in compliance with the Open Meetings Act and requires a majority voice vote by this body. Those in favor of allowing this remote participation, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, thank you. The vote passes. And Buck, you're welcome to join.
Thank you, folks.
All right, our first item is agenda changes and announcements. Staff has no agenda changes or announcements for today. Does any member of the committee wish to propose any agenda changes or make any announcements? I'll add real quickly, obviously you don't need to adjust your cameras. I'm not Megan Swanson. As we've talked, we are slowly filling Megan's position. For those unaware, she is our main liaison between IDOT Bureau of Planning and CMAP here. So while we work to backfill that position, I will be stepping in. So I really look forward to working with you all over the next 6 months. And as soon as replacement is here, we'll get them up and running. So thank you all. Hearing no others, we will move on to approval of minutes. We have before us the draft minutes of the November 19th, 2025 meeting. Are there any corrections or additions? Long time. Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So move, CMAP.
Second. Second, RTA. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to item 4.0, new business, and item 4.1, the fiscal year 2027 to 2031 competitive program revision. I'm going to welcome Hayden to the podium, who's going to take you through the new revisions to the competitive program.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hayden Horton. I'm a TIP analyst here at CMAP. Today, I'm here to summarize some minor revisions requested by RTA and CTA to projects awarded funding in the FY 2027 through 2031 competitive program. So if you can hit that next slide for me. So first up, due to delays related to the formation of NEDA, RTA requested changes to the scope and schedule of their Moving Together project. So just a quick summary of those changes. It included adding CTA as a partner on the project and expanding the study area to include key bus corridors on state-owned roads throughout the 6-county region. They also requested shifting the funding schedule forward 1 year to FY28 and FY29. Next slide, please. CTA also requested scope changes to the South Lakefront Transit Access Study. Key changes in the scope were including a broader range of service alternatives to be examined along 63rd Street between Cottage Grove and Jackson Park, including bus priority treatments and Metra Electric District service. Additional language was also added to ensure that regional service options were fully evaluated when assessing service needs and developing a service plan, including Metra, PACE, and South Shoreline service. They also requested extending the project timeline, but that was within the program funding years. Next slide, please. Because the requested changes to scope and schedule don't impact the scoring or the budget for any of these projects, CMAP staff approved both requests. This table shows the revised program following the approved changes. Your agenda packet also has updated project summaries. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Hayden from the group?
I'll just add some other additional, right? You can recognize that as much as we're trying to move in the right vein here with the formation of NEDA, we are trying to keep the work relevant to that too. So we do have staff that are ongoing working with staff both at CTA and RTA to make sure that we are all sort of working in unison to comply with the new statute. So this is our way of trying to keep things moving in the right direction until NEDA is fully formed.
Just a comment, if I may, on the CTA South Lakefront Trail Access Study. I'm sorry, yes, South Lakefront. I'm sorry, I thought they also had a other.
I think that's my mistake. I think that should say transit.
Thank you. They were very generous in allowing Metra comment period. The governor's office weighed in a bit too. NEDA staff, RTA staff weighed in. So we appreciate the enhanced collaboration coordination that we had in the last few weeks and months revising that scope further. So thank you to CMAP for being amenable to these changes.
I think you said it fairly clearly, but just to reiterate, these are all cost neutral changes, just scope. Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions for Hayden? All right, stay right there. Moving on to item 4.2, contracts and invoice process. Hayden, I'll turn it over to you again.
Okay, just some announcements. So FY 2027 contracts have begun to be distributed. So some of y'all might have received those. However, we have discovered an issue with the effective dates. So please hold off on routing those for execution until you get correspondence from me, CAMA, or our procurements department. Subawardees can begin submitting requests for reimbursement for FY 27 once those contracts are fully executed. And like always, those will be retroactive to July 1st. On July 31st, I'll also be sending out updated FY 27 request for reimbursement workbooks and budget adjustment templates. They'll look mostly the same, just making a few tweaks to kind of improve the functionality on those. But that's it, unless anyone has any questions.
Any questions for Hayden? All right, thank you all. Somewhat related, we'll move on to item 5.0 for the status of invoice submittals, reviews, and payments for fiscal year 26 core projects. Gamma?
All right, we thought Hayden deserved a break because Hayden has been reviewing all of these invoices that came in at the last minute. So you get me. At your place today and on the screen for those online, we will post this up with the agenda materials, but this is hot off the presses, an updated invoicing summary for FY26 that reflects everything that we received literally through this morning. Well, I do want to say thank you to everybody for getting everything in. I also want to say that if you look at what was in the packet just a week ago, there was a lot missing, and that's really not acceptable. everybody's contracts do say that invoicing is due within 45 days of the end of the quarter. So I would expect our procurement staff to start enforcing that a little bit more for FY27, so heads up there. So, having invoices pile in on the last day is hard on staff, but, by not keeping up with our spending throughout the year, we end up leaving money on the table that maybe could have been redistributed. It looks like on the summary that about 6 agencies actually ran out of funding, so could have expended more. But because the fiscal year is already done, we had no flexibility to move that funding around. On the contrary, earlier, a couple months ago, we did receive notice from McHenry County DOT that they weren't going to be able to use their $53,000 core allocation. So we were able to redistribute that because we did find out about it early enough. So, staff took a look at where folks were in their invoicing, and folks that were caught up with their invoicing and trending high for that time of year were contacted to see if they could use that additional funding. So we did redistribute that 53,000 to the Southwest Council of Mayors as well as the King Kendall Council of Mayors. Both of those councils could have actually used even more funding. They're in that 6 that used up all of their funding. So, the more we can all stay on as a group, we're able then to keep the funding within the region. Every fall, our staff has to make an appeal to finance and the executive director for a mark for the core program for external agencies. And when we're leaving $500,000 of that mark unspent at the end of the year, that makes our job harder to request that mark. So, again, if we know about it sooner, we can take steps to make sure it gets spent. So that's my lecture for the afternoon, but I still think we did a good job this year. I think we got a lot of good work done. And again, thanks everybody for, even though it was at the last minute, getting everything in. So that's appreciated. That was all I had. Are there any questions about the expenditures for the year?
Yes, Chris. Yes, Chris Skogsbacken with Pace. I have 2 questions. Are the dollar amounts updated through June, even though they may contain question marks?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these are the final dollar amounts?
These are the final dollar amounts. Full disclosure, they might be off $1 or $2.
Fair enough.
Eat lunch and put dollar amounts in this table. So, but they're pretty close. I know we
Okay.
had one go back this morning because they ended up a little bit over, so they needed to revise their cover sheet. But yeah, these should be up to date.
Okay, thank you. My second question, I noticed there were 2 that say extension approved. It was my understanding that there were no extensions allowed with this grant. Maybe I'm under the wrong impression. So could you please explain that?
So the July 15th deadline for turning in invoices is what was extended, not the actual. So work still had to be completed by June 30th. But CDOT did request, and it's in the contract that you can request that extension for, I think it's 90 days. They provided a soft expenditure estimate, so that's reflected in this table, that estimate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of briefly provide some additional context to go along with what Cam is saying. So we start our budget process with CMAP and similar organizations throughout the state 8 months before the start of the federal fiscal year. And we're hoping to get a budget going in that time. So not only are they trying to project what spending is going to be, divide it up well before the year starts, let alone a whole fiscal year of spending and seeing where you wind up. Things are probably not going to be perfect. No one's budget ever is. But I want to stress that being able to keep up with invoicing and things like that provides flexibility to move that money around. So the way that the state system works right now is anything that's not spent on in this contract year that's on this contract goes back to the state. And while we try to deliver projects that have statewide benefit, the money does not necessarily get spent within the CMAP area. So the more flexibility you can give CAMA, the more flexibility to the team, make sure it helps make sure that money is spent benefiting your particular communities. So please, whatever you can do to keep up with this, or at least reach out and support and provide updates is extremely beneficial in making sure that that happens. Any other questions or comments for Kama?
I think I've said this before, but I just want to say how much I love this spreadsheet. I love the information and the transparency with all the information because I know there were years we weren't getting any of this. And so every time I look at this, I really like it. I just want to pass it along.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we would go nuts if we didn't have a spreadsheet like this. So no reason not to share it.
Anything else for Kama? All right, thank you. We will move on to item 6.0. We've got Metra project updates. I'd like to have welcome Dustin Clark up to the podium. He's going to provide updates on the Metra's sustainability plan, origin destination survey, and targeted ridership station ridership counts. Dustin.
All right, thank you for the time today to let us give you an update on a few of our core, competitive funded projects over the years. Rewinding back to fiscal year 21, we had requested funds for a downtown connection study. COVID happened, so we pivoted and CMAP allowed us to instead use the money to fund our first ever sustainability plan. Before we flip the slide, I will say on the far right, we've got our SD70 Mach locomotive. We've now taken delivery of 26 of the 42 we've purchased. They're 15% more fuel efficient. They're our first tier 3 locomotives, 90% reduction in NOx, significant reduction in many of the other greenhouse gases that we're all breathing here today. So we're really happy to start putting these out onto the rails and distribute them across our system. But in regards to the sustainability plan, on the next slide, we'll see an overview of where we are today. We're about halfway through the overall plan. It is a multi-phased, we're calling it a 7-chapter overall sustainability plan. In our initial task in 2024, we did some benchmarking and what we called a landscape assessment to understand what our peers, other railroads and other transit agencies are doing in terms of sustainable practices and goal setting. We went into a strategy and roadmap in the middle of 2024 to determine where the biggest value adds are for Metra, what would bring down our carbon reduction the most, and how we could implement these practices throughout our agency. We went into a decarbonization strategy and a climate action plan. At the time, FTA had been soliciting transit agencies for climate action plans. Ours is under draft in the early phases. FTA, of course, is not posting those online anymore, but we do intend to revisit that at the right time. And I'll talk a little bit more about our decarbonization strategy on the next slide. We are now moving into a risk and resiliency chapter of our plan as well. That dovetails off of CMAP's TRIP plan, working with Kata Bassick, Nora Beck, and all your other esteemed colleagues. We are zooming in from the CMAP level down to the Metro level, still region-wide, of course, because that's our service area. So in the earlier phase of the plan, we went through our 2023 actual data and tried our best to inventory CO2 equivalents or those things that contribute to greenhouse gas. And what we found was seemingly pretty obvious, I think, to many, that our diesel locomotives are the thing producing most of our GHG gases, our CO2 equivalents. And so here, 75% of our total emissions profile comes from our diesel locomotives. We were also not surprised to see electricity purchase to be the next big category, 14% of our emissions. That does account for our Metro Electric line, that is the single overhead catenary powered locomotive line. And then we also have all of our facilities across the region contributing to that. We have a few other emissions categories, on-road and off-road, some of the heat generation and chilled water even in this area. Broadly, we've broken this out into scope 1, which we could call direct emissions from Metra, and scope 2, indirect. where our electricity purchases, if the grid were to move in a greener direction or nuclear power creates more of that energy generation, our GHG profile would decrease in that scope 2 area. On the next slide, we'll talk about the 7 biggest areas where we see the opportunity to reduce our emissions in the near term. Chief among them, battery electric locomotives or train sets. And here we have a $169 million CMAQ grant that helped us stand up our contract with Stadler to put out perhaps the first battery-powered passenger trains in America. They'll be coming to visit Chicago this October. They will be on a rail and in revenue service, we hope, next year. So of course, there's a high potential there. We're still watching the market to see if battery hybrid locomotives are a capable emergent technology to deploy, longer range than we would get out of the train sets. Renewable fuels in locomotives are a huge area for some of the freight industry partners that we have. We're using a lower sulfur diesel or even a slightly biodiesel blend can bring down the emissions reductions. It does come with the trade-off of more wear and tear on the locomotive engine. So we're reviewing the potential of introducing that technology. And then a few other items are listed here. I won't dive into each of those in interest of time, but we may take a look at locomotive engine management systems, facility operating efficiencies, renewable energy generation on site, and grid greening. With that, we'll go on to the next project component of this overall sustainability plan, our climate resilience and vulnerability analysis. Again, we are taking in what we learned from TRIP and trying to apply that to Metra and our specific operating environment. So we've gone through the scoping phase. We're in the middle of our vulnerability assessment right now. And in the last 6 weeks, I think we've hit all 6 natural disasters we have in this region, between flooding to air quality, high winds even, which make some of our trains get shut down. Our BNSF Railroad or Union Pacific partners will call our dispatch center and shut down certain lines or segments when we have high winds, and they have a lower tolerance for that wind speed than Metra does. And then from there, we'll go into a prioritization of what areas we want to look at as being the most critical, most vulnerable asset types that we have in our system. And we'll come out of this with a climate resilience toolkit. The ambition is to hopefully update some of our design standards for stations, facilities, and such to take in what we've learned and to start to plan and build a little bit differently to account for these long-term climate change impacts. Okay, on the next slide, we have our system-wide origin destination survey. Prior to COVID, we had gotten into a rhythm of doing this type of survey every 2 to 3 years. Of course, COVID happened. We switched to primarily estimating our passenger rides by our mobile app, Ventra, which now accounts for about 87% of ticket sales. So we get really good data out of there. And also conductor counts, literally clicking when they see each interaction of people getting on the train. So on the next slide, we'll have a little bit of information about this study and how it differs from our previous iterations. Our last one took place in 2018 and 2019. So we have a lot of stale data that we want to implement a similar survey and see if our methodology on our mobile trip authentication is agreeing with this origin destination survey. We typically collect data in the autumn. That's our peak ridership period. Once everybody has finished their summer vacations, people are back in school. And now a growing market for Metra is our ridership of university students. And some of our UPass Connect options have increased ridership that we observe in September. So this fall, we'll have a deployment of our consultants. If you could go to the next slide. We recently contracted with WBA Research. They're based in Maryland. They have worked for a lot of the Northeast area large transit organizations out there. Our contract was finalized in May. We have some pre-test site visits scheduled for next week, so hopefully the air quality is a little better. And we'll go to some stations and figure out the means and methods of this surveying instrument that they have proposed. And then we'll do our counts in fall. We'll review that data through the winter into April. We expect to have some final results and reports over to NETA, CMAP, IDOT, and anyone else that's interested. We'd hope to close out the state fiscal year with our final invoices and project closeout. So June 2027, we're hopeful to hit that target. And that's the origin destination ridership counts. The next slide, we'll talk about a little bit different technology that we're hoping to deploy very, very soon. This project also funded through UWP competitive funds. On the next slide, you'll see we are in an earlier phase of this. We are not yet contracted. We might be by this time next month. The idea here is instead of going to every single station, let's find about 30 locations where we want to test the ability to use cameras with some light AI scrubbing, so no video that's going to be retained or facial identification, but rather to try and capture instances of unique users at our station platforms. Think of these high crowding events downtown for Taste of Chicago or Ravinia season that's about to pick up right now. Place a camera up on a mast pole, try to record that data, validate that with people, boots on the ground, also doing a collection of how many riders they see coming on and off our trains and waiting at our stations. So we're very hopeful that this emergent technology proves successful. We're starting out here with a relatively small pilot of about 30 locations. And with that, I think this is the last slide that I have prepared. In May, we did some site visits with the potential contractor. We're still deliberating that contract with our procurement department. In August, we anticipate having that contract finalized. This fall, we would do some targeted station counts. Perhaps that would sprinkle into the winter and springtime as well. And then by this time next year, we would wrap up our findings and then provide those out again to NETA, CMAP, IDOT, and all those interested, and then hope to close that project out by the end of next calendar year, ideally. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions from the group. Heather, yes.
Thank you, Dustin. With I think it's the origin destination survey, very interested in the access piece of that as we work with providing access to transit improvements at the RTA. Do you know what the categories are for that? Are you expanding them with this survey?
I believe we're going to keep
ride share and things like that this time around?
Yeah, I believe we're going to keep them relatively the same with some kind of more inclusive uses. I think previously we had used taxi or drop off, so we will also include TMPs there. We might be able to separate out drop offs from a family member or friend versus a paid for ride share, bicycle connections, walking, and transit to transit connections as well would be in that survey.
And a follow-up question, that the parking utilization, does that come in with either of these activities or is that separate?
That is separate. We do have our GIS department now taking lead on some of the parking utilization assessments. I believe we did an initial assessment with the most relevant data and provided that to RTA for the broader effort that you're leading. It's an area though that we usually use in-house staff to collect that data.
Dustin, thanks. This is really great work. This sort of information just gets us smarter and helps us think about how to really be good stewards of tax dollars and putting it where it really matters. So this is really helpful. I'm curious, related to the sustainability plan, do you think that the plan will also speak to how Metro wants to deploy those lower emission locomotives? Will that be in the sustainability plan or is that separate?
I'll consider that. I'll bring that back to the broader team. I'm co-leading with our Safety and Environmental Compliance Division on that plan. We do have operational considerations, line by line considerations. For example, that SD70 Mach locomotive at the start of the slide deck, it is too heavy to go on 2 of our rail lines with some of the bridge conditions we have. It's 6 axles versus 5, carries, I think, 4,000 more gallons of diesel. So we tend to keep that on the Milwaukee district. We are looking to deploy it on the BNSF perhaps later this year, now that we've collected 26 of those locomotives. And then with the battery train sets from Stadler that will be in revenue service next year, our initial area, as we outlined in the CMAQ application, will be on the Rock Island line, specifically the Beverly branch. There's a great opportunity there where our stations are built about a quarter mile apart, dating back to about the World's Fair timeline. So transit-oriented development as it was originally built. And there's a lot of regenerative braking benefits from there. Also, the propulsion method pick up speed quicker than a diesel locomotive. And so we're currently looking at that corridor as the primary area for those train sets. Our executive leadership would like us to look at a few other corridors as well, but that'd be a great spot to document all that and the constraints and the considerations in our sustainability plan.
Yeah, I recognize there's a lot to juggle there and to optimize those decisions. I just ask that you think about like the vulnerable populations and things like that as you go. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Dustin. Are there any other questions?
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Now to put everyone else on the spot, do any other members of the committee have any updates they'd like to provide on stuff they're working on their competitive projects or core program? All right, hearing none, would anyone like to reserve time at the next meeting to talk about their competitive project or core program projects?
Brandon, I can ask the counties to see if any of the sponsors at the county level would want to do a presentation. No commitments, but I can see what I can do.
Perfect. Thank you, Scott. We'll send out an email communication, I guess, just to follow up. Obviously, these meetings will start picking up when we get into the fall and winter, and plenty of opportunity just to hear about the good work going on. So thank you. All right. No other questions or comments. We move on to item 7.0, other business. Do any members of the committee have any other business to bring to the committee? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to public comment. Item 8.0, staff did not receive any public comment prior to today's meeting. Let's see. Nothing online? Nothing online. All right. Anyone in the room? Any comments from those in the room? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to next item, 9.0, next meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for August 27th, 2026. All right. We'll close out to adjournment. Any other business before we close? Any thoughts?
Just want to say you did a great job posting your first meeting. So
Thank
well
you.
done, Sharon.
Thank you, Scott. All right, there being no other business, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved, counties.
Got a first and a second? Second. RTA. Any opposed? All right. With all in favor, we'll do a voice vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any nays? All right, this meeting is now adjourned at 2:04. Thank you all.